For more on what's going on, let's bring in the Pentagon correspondent for Breitbart News, Kristina Wong, is here. Kristina, good to have you back on the show.
Hello, Vince. Thanks for having me back.
How is the United States military involved in the border mission right now?
Yeah, so under Trump, there's been about 1,600 active duty troops deployed to the border to supplement the 2,500 active duty who were actually already there. So now the number is 4,000 active duty troops, and that doesn't count the reserve and National Guard forces who are also there. So it's a huge plus up. This is President Trump's number one priority to secure the border, and he has tapped Tom Homan and Pete Hegseth, Defense Secretary, to assist with that.
And what kind of work are the troops doing for the border?
Yeah, so they are building barriers, putting up wire, stopping illegal immigrants from coming across. They're also doing surveillance, so flying drones, flying aircraft missions, and they're also providing transport. So I think we've seen video of migrants being put on planes back to Colombia and other countries. So they're doing that too. And they're about to have a huge mission, which is to bring illegal migrants to Gitmo, Guantanamo Bay, the naval station there. I've actually been there several times. And so these criminal migrants are going to be brought to Gitmo. And I believe the number is up to 30,000. There's a lot of space. Yeah. This is not going to be the same area where they held the terrorist suspects, right, like Khalid Sheikh Mohammed. This is a different part of Gitmo, and our Secretary of Defense actually served there in 2004, 2005.
Yeah, that's right. And in fact, if you go back to the 90s, we were talking about this when President Trump made the announcement. Bill Clinton kept upwards of 50,000 foreign nationals at Gitmo at this very detention space, which is designed to hold these foreign nationals. And the press seemed very confused by all of this last week. They're like, well, how long is it going to take to build? And President Trump kept telling them, no, you don't understand. We have the space. We're going to use
it. That's right. And Defense Secretary Hegseth said this has been done for decades, actually. So it makes a lot of sense. There's plenty of room, and it's a huge decision.
Yeah, that's a big deal. So it's interesting seeing Defense Secretary Hegseth on the border. You see Tom Homan on the border. You see Kristina Wong riding horseback with the Border Patrol agents. This is pretty different, isn't it, Kristina, from the Biden era? I don't remember Alejandro Mayorkas and Kamala Harris and Lloyd Austin, showing themselves even on the border and really maintaining a presence there.
Yeah, I mean, it is really significant that this is the Defense Secretary's first trip. His first, it shows the importance of the mission, by taking this trip down there. And, he'll probably take some other trips too, but, in the near future. But this first one to the border, that speaks volumes about what this administration's priorities are. Yeah. They're playing cleanup in a lot of areas, from border, to aviation, to cleaning up DEI, and it's only the second, third week. Yes. I've lost count. They've already done so much, and the Defense Secretary, I mean, in his first week has done so much more than Lloyd Austin has ever done. I think during Lloyd Austin's first week, I think it was transgender troops and standing up the counter-extremism working group. I think, I can't even remember a week as busy as this under General Lloyd Austin.
By the way,
even before that.
Yeah, and that counter-extremism mission that Lloyd Austin launched was a snipe hunt. It was nothing. It was a joke because they quietly ended up releasing a report many months later saying, yeah, we didn't really find any extremism in the ranks of the military. A couple of gang members, that was it. But other than that, we're fine. And so it was a big waste of time. And also, so far, I feel like I know what Pete Hegseth has been doing every day that he's been defense secretary, whether he's responding to a helicopter crash in the Potomac or headed to the border, working for the president and his agenda. Lloyd Austin would disappear for months on end with medical emergencies and not tell the American people.
Yes, he was totally MIA. He never came out to the podium. which Pentagon reporters supposedly don't like, but they didn't really say much when it was Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin, when Biden was in office. But yeah, you're right. I mean, every single day we're seeing tweets from the current Defense Secretary's personal and official accounts, just statements. He's been at the White House podium. It's a whole new way of doing business. It's a whole new, today we see him tweeting his arrival at Fort Bliss. This is the Defense Secretary down in Texas. And so I feel like we're getting more information than ever. So far, this administration has been pretty transparent, beginning, at the White House and down to the DOD. And it just, they're moving. And we also see that with Secretary of State Marco Rubio, too. I mean, they know how to use social media to get their message out and to let us know what we're doing. And I feel like the American people should feel good about, getting such a good return on their vote, because, they're being kept up to date on what's being done.
Yeah, no, that's for sure. Hey, so I want to ask you about transparency at the Pentagon. One of the big stories from the weekend is that the Pentagon, led by new Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, has decided that a couple of legacy news outlets can no longer take for granted the fact that they have some sort of permanent office space at the Pentagon. And I'm gonna read the replacements. Now, the way the press is talking about this, either they're not telling you the other news outlets who are getting the office space, or that if they are, they're doing it with utter contempt for the outlets that are being included. But here we go. One America News is replacing NBC News. Breitbart, that's you, Kristina Wong, replacing National Public Radio. The New York Post is replacing the New York Times, and right-wing media outlet Huffington Post, it's lefty, is replacing Politico in the coveted Correspondence Corridor. Tell us about the Correspondence Corridor and its occupants.
So there is an office inside the Pentagon. I'm not sure how many people are aware of this, but the Pentagon Press Corps is embedded inside the building. I know a lot of folks are surprised when they've come by and they've seen this, but so there's a corridor with offices for all the big network news outlets, radio outlets, legacy print outlets, and they've been there for many years, probably over 2 decades. It's a very small area, a small press bullpen, and from there, reporters can talk to defense officials. Defense officials often come by and chat with the reporters, or, vice versa. The reporters can go outside and talk to defense officials. You have very, very easy, quick access inside the Pentagon. And so what this administration is doing under Defense Secretary Hegseth, they've ordered for the New York Times, NBC, NPR, Politico to move out of their dedicated workspaces. So these outlets who've had a desk there, some longer than others, they have to move out. They have to pick up their stuff and move. I think it's for at least a year, and give them to New York Post, OANN, Breitbart, us, and Huffington Post.
Yes.
And so, and so that's it's symbolic, but it's also a huge physical change, and it's a message to the establishment legacy media that they are no longer going to be prioritized, because for many, many, many years they were afforded many opportunities that other news media do not get.
Well, also, if you entrench the establishment press, they end up setting the agenda for the country. And that's the last thing you want to do. You want people there who are going to try and ferret out information and report to the American people, rather than try and guide the policy of any specific Pentagon, for instance. The New York Times is panicking about this. They released a statement. They said this move to expel the Times and other independent fact-based news outlets from the Pentagon's press spaces is a concerning development. The Department of Defense has the largest discretionary budget in the government, millions of Americans in uniform under its direction, and control of a vast arsenal funded by taxpayers. The Times is committed to covering the Pentagon fully and fairly. Steps designed to impede access are clearly not in the public interest. Now, Kristina, correct me if I'm wrong. The New York Times is not having its access impeded, are they? They're still entitled to the same access they had before, I thought.
Absolutely. They just don't have their same desk. I mean, they're still welcome to come into the Pentagon. There's other places they can sit at. But you're right in that these entrenched reporters, they're dominated by lefties, and they advocate for Democrat priorities and policies, and their leftist constituents. They've advocated openly for aid to Ukraine, aid to Gaza, promoting transgender troops, DEI at the Pentagon, and other, left-leaning, agenda items. And so now you'll have media who represent the 77 million who voted for Trump and sort of just balance out the press corps. So, there's a lot of overwrought statements put out by the legacy media. They're still welcome to be there.
Yes.
This is just
Well,
deprioritizing them.
Well, implicit in a statement like that from the New York Times is that you, Kristina Wong, are not a real journalist and cannot do this job. It has to be a New York Times person. It can't be Kristina Wong from Breitbart News.
Exactly. And, it's funny because, I've been reporting on the Pentagon since 2011, and I don't have a dedicated, coveted spot there for the last 11 years, and you have to do your job by you don't have internet, you don't have a desk, people don't know where to find you. I've done perfectly fine, I think, but this really does send a message to the whole DoD, and in fact I think the whole government, that you can't ignore outlets like Breitbart, OANN, even Huffington Post. You can't ignore the other folks, and like you said, we're just as important, and we do just as good work. Yes. And cover the building just as well as these outlets do.
And it also really cuts through the lie that it's all for one and one for all. This thing where people are like, we as reporters, we all have to link arms. But then the second the New York Times and NPR lose their coveted space inside the Pentagon, and they're replaced by One America and Breitbart and the New York Post and the Huffington Post. Now they're like, oh, this is an attack on press freedom. Whatever happened to the Three Musketeers stuff?
Oh, I could tell you stories from my last, decade covering the Pentagon. I think the Pentagon Press Corps, they pretend that they're very impartial, but that's not the case. That's not my experience. When I started reporting at Breitbart, it was a complete, switch in how I was treated, and they kind of sell themselves off as impartial reporters, but I found in my personal experience that is not the case.
Yeah, no, they're a bunch of sneering jerks, actually. And one last thing: do you get to decorate your office space to your own liking at the Pentagon?
I do. It's actually according to memo, I get a radio booth now, so that'll be kind of fun. I don't know if I'll be doing radio from there. I'm not sure. I'm not radio person like you. Maybe I'll start, but at least I'll put up a sign.
Yeah,
I'll put up a sign that says Breitbart News.
Yes, and not the New York Times. They are not allowed. Like straight up, like Little Rascal style. New York Times is banned from this office. You're not allowed in here. Hey, Kristina Wong, thank you very much, and have fun at the Pentagon. Can't wait to talk to you again soon.
Thank you so much.
All right,
thank you so much, Vince.
Kristina Wong, Pentagon correspondent over at Breitbart.